So it's been a while since I last did a video update or a podcast, and the reason for that is twofold. I recently left my job after 15 years, and I've taken a bit of a break. I'm going to be announcing what I'll do next very shortly, but in the meantime, I didn't record anything or publish anything, just when I was wrapping up that chapter. However, that doesn't mean that the AI world has stopped or gone on pause. It's still going. I was looking back at everything that I said I wanted to see from 2026 in my last update and realizing a lot of it's moved forward. There's so many things that I wanted to see out of this year that just 3-4 months later are already starting to take shape. You're starting to see examples of them in the wild. And I wanted to give a quick update on each of the themes and just say kind of where they're at, what I've seen, whether, I was on the right track in terms of the type of themes we should be focusing on. So let's dive into it. Number one, I had as sovereignty made simple. So my idea was that nations would want their own AI infrastructure, their own compute, their own models, and that we would find a product category that makes it easy and not just a complex wish list. And there's been a number of announcements. So SUSE and NVIDIA have a turnkey sovereign AI factory. Palantir got involved with this as one of their offerings with NVIDIA. We're seeing Microsoft with private clouds, SAP with private clouds in Europe. The UK launched a £500 million sovereign AI unit on April 16th. And India got its first sovereign agentic inference platform through NextGen. So there's lots of these announcements. A few things that I would note. I don't know whether we're necessarily at the point of sovereignty made simple. I think the reality is we've got sovereignty for AI as a service. That's definitely coming. The complexities of it definitely to sit behind all those announcements. I don't think they necessarily make it easy and turnkey and something that you can just adopt. Also on the UK side, 500 million sounds like a lot of money, but in the world of AI and capex spend, it's just so tiny. It would have been more interesting if that had been a bigger investment, a bigger announcement. But, when you compare that to everything else in the market, it's less than 0.1% of OpenAI's valuation. I think you're going to need a lot more from a nation state perspective in that area. But also, it takes time. The product category exists. We've seen announcements. I don't think it's at the point where we can say 2026 was a year that sovereignty for AI got made simple. Theme 2 was context is king. So this one has moved fast. My original prediction and kind of wish was that we would, go beyond just longer context windows and better retrieval and get to the point where we're moving into context graphs and context becoming the valuable thing that people want to capture, architect, store, retrieve, maintain, that it's going to be the thing that really matters. I think that's really moving fast. Gartner is now projecting that more than 50% of AI agent systems will use context graphs by 2028. Like many Gartner predictions, that's kind of a directional sense of where things are heading. And you're already seeing the standards that we've talked about before in this podcast, like MCP, becoming common foundations for a lot of that. A lot of that access to system data is coming through those protocols. We saw Glean hit a $200 million ARR at a $7.2 billion valuation. And Glean is all about enterprise context search. So you're seeing people and investors really dive into the whole context space because it is valuable. It is undeniably the area that is untapped when it comes to how to get the most value out of AI and agents. And we still don't have a single solution. There's fragmentation everywhere. And this is where I can go a bit off-piste because I've been dabbling with this quite a lot with personal agents that I've been using. And I've been looking at something that Andre Carpathy posted about that went really viral a few weeks ago, which was his LLM wiki, this skill where you can get your agents to create context graphs in Obsidian. Obsidian's an open source simplified file graph system where you have these markdown files and they can all be connected and linked to each other. Think about it like Wikipedia, but locally and just using very simple markdown files. This skill tapped into something really interesting, which is that the context that you need to capture is often text-based, it's often language, it's semantics, it's in text-based documents and markdown files. And that's how a lot of agents actually capture information that you talk to them about. So by having a skill that lets you create and update this wiki, you suddenly start gathering more context, and you can do it programmatically and systematically over time, which is something that was missing. I think is still missing. Enterprises have knowledge that's kind of captured and documents and SharePoints and everything, but context, things that happen in the flow of a conversation, a chat session, that isn't really captured anywhere. So this really tapped into something, and I've been using it a lot. Found it incredibly useful. I'm building up my own personal wikis, these kind of text-based brains that make my AI agents way more valuable than just spinning up ChatGPT and having a conversation with a standard large language model. You can put custom prompting, you can put a personality behind it, but the context that it needs to go and pull from isn't something you're putting in that initial prompt. It's going to be that builds up over time. It needs to know what to look for. And so Andre Kopathy, yet again, hit the nail on the head with one of his fun side projects. And I found it very, very interesting seeing how much more valuable it makes the agents that I've built just by using that. So context is king, super important trend, understated at the moment, but really, really coming through with a vengeance. And context graphs are going to be the holy grail for this year. Number 3, memory matters. So this was meant to be linked to context, but more to do with how we handle memory, how they remember episodal memory, what you talk about in certain sessions, across tasks, across time, across channels. And we've had a breakthrough quarter. So Anthropic enabled persistent memory for all of Claude. ChatGPT shipped pretty much the same tool that you could import memory from one to another. And people are realizing that what you feed these tools, you could think of it as context, you can think of it as memory, but the things it remembers about you, being able to pull that out and take it to other places is valuable. So those tools have been built. And we're seeing a lot of new approaches to memory. Google released something end of last year called Titans architecture with memory integrated recurrent associative systems, which is a very different way of having long-term memory encoded. And I haven't seen that come into production settings at the moment, but you're seeing slightly different ways of bringing this in. So it's not just I remembered this thing from that chat. It's actually having it have a weight, have some sort of decay quality where you forget about it, and having that retrieval be linked to how important it is. Long and short about the memory topic is that there's no standard. So where we have a lot of standards now for interoperability, for how agents talk to one another, and for the way that we define skills and all these different things, we haven't really got a open standard that's enterprise grade and GDPR grade for portable cross-vendor memory. It just doesn't exist. It's all a bit fragmented. So here, I think it's still a trend that we should see gain maturity over the course of this year. That being said, where I've been experimenting with different agents, with OpenClaw, with Hermes, with some of these, run it yourself agent harnesses, the way they handle memory is all a bit different. And I'm also learning the pitfalls of what it remembers, how memory isn't a panacea. You kind of have a trade-off with how much memory you want to actually keep and retain and feed into the context of every session you have. Exactly like you would with your own brain. You have to learn to forget and to prioritize different things. And if you want to commit it to long-term memory or to maybe even a file or a document, that's when your wiki comes into fruition and your context graph, because that's where you can offload things in memory and you can say, oh, actually for that I need to go find it later. So memory matters is complicated at the moment. Sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes it's completely chaotic. And I think we haven't quite hit the nail on the head there. Theme 4, War of the World models. I'll keep this one brief because, in all honesty, I think we've seen some big releases. We saw the new Gaia 3 model with a consumer available version. We saw NVIDIA's Cosmos get over 2 million downloads. We've seen universities bring world models into entirely new parts of physics. But have we seen a kind of true battle of these world models, not yet. It's coming soon, but I think second half of the year is where we'll see some of that start to really take mindshare. Theme 5, voice is a choice. This one's really awkward because I'm passionate about voice being the dominant computing interface. It's remarkable when it works really well. And I wanted this theme to be about everywhere, every interface has fantastic voice, and that we would start doing a lot more with voice input and voice generation and conversational interfaces. But it's still a mess, to be honest. OpenAI and ChatGPT have a fantastic voice input method. Tools that I use, like Whisperflow or Super Whisper, are incredible and can take what I say verbatim and allow me to basically just talk to a computer and get a lot done. However, if I use Gemini or I use Claude or I use, God forbid, like the voice inputs that Microsoft add into Outlook or that come natively from iOS, they're just shocking. I don't know if it's my accent, I don't know what it is, but it really is fascinating how when it works and when you find a product that really gets you and that's highly accurate about transcribing what you're talking about, it truly feels like you've hit magician level. And then when you don't, you're like, what am I in? 2019? This is just embarrassing. So we are in a period where the UX gap is enormous. And I think the majority of people are probably still not realizing what's possible because they're stuck with the terrible experience that's still available everywhere. And when they discover genuinely close to perfection voice input and conversational interfaces, it's going to be a complete game changer. So we'll wait till the second half of the year for more of that. Number 6, build your own desktop. So this one was starting to become big, even when I talked about it in January. I think we can say that it's just a thing now. So vibe coding is a thing, shifting away from humans writing code to humans orchestrating agents that build whatever you want to build is here. It's happening. Claude Code authors over 4% of all public GitHub commits, according to SemiAnalysis. We're basically seeing a world where if you want something to be built and no one's built it, you can talk to a AI and you can build it yourself. And more people are doing it. There are different levels to it. Some people are building it on steroids and doing things that seem impossible. Other people is just, I wanted to build a dashboard. I wanted to build this thing, and they can. And I think that's a really amazing unlock. So the build your own desktop trend is a fantastic thing to see. That being said, security problems and the lack of scalability and maintainability of the things we're building is a real problem. And I don't think we've got a solution to that at a broader enterprise level. Also, if you look at the analysis from CodeRabbit, you'll see that AI co-authored code has 1.7 times more major issues than human-only code. So yeah, twice as many major issues are coming from the AI written code, and we're writing 10, 100 times more code with AI than ever before. So hundreds of more major issues are going to be included in the things we're building. So the maturity of it will take time. I think it's a topic I could probably go into in another session, but the long and short of it is that the build your own desktop movement is definitely here, and it's not going away. It's only going to become more important for people to be just real comfortable building rather than expecting someone to have built it for you. That being said, let's move on to theme 7. I had a theme 7 as business case to value at pace. Ultimately, everyone wants to show return on investment. The long and short of it now is that I think we're at the point where we're starting to agree there's value here. And we're seeing companies that can prove the value that they're delivering at scale. That's starting to come through. The data's actually starting to become quite interesting. But more importantly, the evals, like the evaluations that are being built out, are becoming much more sophisticated, and people are investing in them. So we've gone from kind of custom evals and things built by the model labs now to different companies, Braintrust, Langsmith, Ariza, Galileo. They all have these eval tools which are gaining investment, being used, proving and demonstrating and observing agents in real world end-to-end tasks, not just how good is it at a benchmark and how much does it tick the boxes that you've got in terms of your testing, but can it actually deliver economic value end to end. And this is an interesting shift because when we move to that, it's not a kind of hypothetical time saved on a task. It's time and productivity improvements on end-to-end processes, which is really important. And I think when we start seeing that, the outcome-based pricing that we always talk about trying to get to, where you look at, what's the actual value of the thing we've done. Thank you, AI, you've done that. This is how valuable it is. That will start to become more normalized, and we'll have ways of measuring it and proving it and being more comfortable to actually scaling that value quickly rather than just making business cases. Theme number 8, Agentic OS becomes the new UX. I mean, this is just my favorite thing of the whole 10 that I had. I don't know why I had it at 8, but it just seems like it's the strongest and it's come to fruition. So whether you look at what Google have done with their Gemini enterprise agent platform, or you look at Cloudflare having its agents SDK, this Project Think approach to adding agents across all of their web services, or OpenAI building their super app and their workplace enterprise agents, everyone is moving towards this world where the operating system is agentic. Salesforce is a great example of this. So their move recently to have this headless agent AI layer, think of it like an API layer, but where there's no user interface and it's just agents being able to ask for information and surface that wherever you want it, in any channel that you need it to be in. That's a really interesting move, and that's where we start to see the operating system part become agentic, as opposed to just, okay, we can build lots of more tools, we can build lots of agents, we have this imagination that you're looking at it. The product is kind of behind that. And the biggest place I've seen this is with the elephant in the room, the kind of OpenClaw hype cycle that we've gone through, where everything is being OpenClawed. and if you don't know what that is, that's the viral sensation where a harness, they call it a harness, basically a way of taking models that you have access to, taking their APIs, putting it into some software that you run and you host yourself, and allowing you to have your own personal AI agent with everything private and kind of run by you, hosted by you, configured by you, but customized and flexible and integrated to your life and your tools and everything else. And this has skyrocketed in popularity. So 364,000 GitHub stars, I think 74,000 forks, 35,000 commits. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA said it's the most important software of our generation. It's that important because it's just become so popular. You probably don't know people using it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you're using it. I dived into this and I've realized that is why we talk about the agentic operating system. It's more than an understanding of I need this vendor, as opposed to saying, actually, what are we talking about? We're talking about agents that have a personality, that have a set of files that define them, that have access to tools that they can go use, that have skills that they can make the most of to do things for us, and that evolve over time, collecting memories, collecting context, and becoming better. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Apart from, once you realize that, it's just this sea of complexity now, because people who understand the architecture and have got a bit hands-on with what OpenClaw or Hermes or any number of the various agentic harnesses that are out there, or people who are just using Claude Code and Codex and some things from the model labs that have very similar but more productionized setups, those people now know how to navigate that agentic operating system and make it relevant for themselves. And that's incredibly valuable. It's the thing that I think has shifted the furthest since we talked about it in January. And we've gone from kind of, okay, so eventually all these agents need to connect to one another and do something, to this is a product category. And very quickly people are realizing their whole organization needs to have an agentic operating system, and that it hasn't been done before. So, okay, we have to try and figure out how to do this and deliver the experience, the services, make it maintainable, provide governance, provide security, which is increasingly becoming the biggest pitfall to these things, and do it in a way that actually makes sense long term. This is both the most mature in terms of how much it's come along in the last few months, and still at its most infantile, in all honesty. but I love that topic. Anyway, waffling on. Theme 9, ending the open versus closed divide. So my big hope here was that we would stop having this open versus closed, west versus east. There was a split between the model lab companies and where they were based and what they were making. I think we've started to see some convergence, and we're seeing that with the latest DeepSeek model that is reaching the capability levels of some of the best closed source frontier lab models. But we're also seeing this weird thing where OpenAI have released their own open source models, and you've seen companies like ZAI and Mistral that are known for making open source models. They've released their own proprietary closed source models, and people are hedging it both ways now to kind of have a range of offerings out there, and they're able to do it on different hardware. So DeepSeek famously were able to train their models without the latest NVIDIA GPUs, and that breaks the assumption we have around this kind of like hegemony of where the AI power is going to come from. And I'm liking to see how that's taking shape, and I like that the model labs are providing both open source and closed source options and not being ideologically minded around these, because we're going to need variations. Like Meta, who have a lot of open source AI models, and they famously wanted to make Llama very much on the open source side, they've released something called Muse Spark, which is a closed model and breaks away from that Llama family. And so you're kind of seeing this ideological split break up and become more nuanced and, you know, more of a spectrum. And I think that's quite helpful, right? I want to see that theme continue as we get into the second half of the year. I think it'll be really interesting, and everyone hopefully benefits from that type of collaboration, partnership, and research. Last theme 10, Impossible Era. So this was called Impossible Era, Stop Talking About the Bubble. I feel like everyone stopped talking about the AI bubble. Like, it happened. But what hasn't happened is we haven't kind of shifted towards, okay, well, AI is now going to start doing the impossible. I think CapEx projections have been revised up. Goldman Sachs is saying 527 billion, hyperscalers 650 billion, Microsoft just throwing in 146 billion. Like, there's a lot of investment, but I don't think people are that worried about it being just an AI bubble now. Like, there may be a stock market bubble, but I don't think it's like just AI. What's interesting is you're seeing some things show up that make you feel like we're not just talking about efficiency AI, just cost cutting, job cutting, and like we're talking more about opportunity AI, things that are possible. So Future House's Cosmos agent is actually autonomously discovering new scientific findings. We've had GPT Rosalind built for biology and drug discovery. DeepMind are starting to prepare clinical trials for AI-designed drugs. We had that moment probably a month ago where GPT 5.2 contributed towards a theoretical physics result that was then proven by human scientists. We're seeing really interesting things come through in the scientific space, but also in areas where people are using AI to do things they literally couldn't do before. At the moment, you start to see that in science, but you'll start to see that in just every company soon. And I like that trend. I want us to get away from it's taking my job, it's making things just more efficient and just faster and giving me more and more things to do. That isn't necessarily where I think we end up. I think we end up with discovering new jobs, discovering new possibilities, and entirely new business models, which I think is starting to come through. Anyway, this has gone on far too long. It's been really good just going through this, just for my own sanity, just trying to get everything that I'm learning about and exposed to out there. There will be more announcements to come from me, and there will also be more updates in terms of what's happening in the space, things I'm building, things other people are building, and my expectations and predictions of where we'll see the AI space go in the next 6 months. So I'll hopefully keep you updated as this continues. Take care. Hope you're keeping well.